You incredible little marketing bees. You're tuned into episode 75 of the Marketing Buzzword Podcast.
This is the Marketing Buzzword Podcast, the podcast where we dissect the world's most common marketing buzzwords. Hold on tight. We are about to fly around the beehive to see the latest buzzwords that stuck to the marketing bees.
Hello again, and welcome back to the Marketing Buzzword Podcast. This is the podcast which helps you to understand what all of these business and marketing buzzwords actually mean and how they can be helpful not going forward. I'm your host, Ben Roberts, and in this show, I'm the marketing bee in charge of making sure I can get on the right guests and ask the right questions to make sure that these words and phrases actually make sense. And in today's show, well, it's a very special show, and we're going to make sense of all the buzzwords that we've covered so far in the 75 episodes of this podcast. Before I talk to you a little bit about that and this week's show, I need to remind you this podcast is powered by Talkative. Talkative is a company that brings together live web chat, voice calling, video calling, and co-browsing together in one package embedded into your website. This allows you and your business to truly engage with your customers, offer quick and effective resolutions to your questions, and improve the customer experience. You can find out more at talkative.uk, and seriously, it is a really, really cool tool. And one final thing before we get to this week's show, I just want to say a huge, huge thank you, because this show has gone beyond my wildest dreams. It's been a crazy, amazing journey, and I'm having December off the podcast. Not because I'm not enjoying it, and not because I don't want to do this. It's just literally because I need to finish a book. And having December off seemed a natural pause on the podcast. 75 episodes, the first week of December, back on the first week of January. Seems like a natural break where I can really smash out the rest of the book, get that as good as possible, ready for a February launch. And I thought, well, 75 episodes, what a way to actually, it just almost seemed like it was fate for it to finish this sort of first part on there, which is incredible. And I've learned so much in this process, and I continue to do so. So, I am looking for more guests from January onwards. I'm also looking for new buzzwords to cover from January onwards. So if you are interested in potentially being on the show, know someone who would be good to be on the show, or a buzzword that you'd like to be covered on the show, please do let me know. Because there are so many buzzwords out there. I want to break them down. I want to make sure I can get on the right guests, and obviously ask the right questions to make sure that they all make sense. So, I'm about to read to you a list. There's a list of all the unique buzzwords that we've covered so far in this podcast. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back through and I'm going to give you one or two learning points from each of these buzzwords, because I think that's actually important. These are one or two things that I've taken away from learning about each one of these buzzwords to see actually, is it something that's relevant to my business or not? Because I think that's the really important thing. I don't like necessarily jargon. I don't like people who use buzzwords to barrier to industry, but I feel like buzzwords can actually be used in a different way, can be used in a better way, which many of our guests are doing. They're breaking it down, they're helping people make sense of what this term actually means. And that's what I absolutely love about doing this show. So, without further ado, here are some of the buzzwords that we've covered throughout the entirety of these 75 episodes. Social customer service, social selling, relationship marketing, great content, millennial marketing, creating communities, engaging content, networking, authority marketing, SEO/search engine optimization, humanization, machine learning, digital knowledge management (DKM), event marketing, going live/live video, copywriting, entrepreneurship, influencer marketing, conversational marketing, paid search, video marketing, user-generated content, chatbots, PR, marketing trust, online reviews, social good, podcasting, data-driven marketing, GDPR, Facebook groups, conversion rate optimization, branding, social contesting, conversational commerce, guerrilla marketing, self-publishing, corporate culture, account-based marketing, PPC and pay-to-play, inbound marketing, convenience, gamification, meaningful interactions, referral marketing, creative AI, social intelligence, tribes, snackable content, and last but not least, online courses. Now, a lot of buzzwords there. When I go through these individually and sort of break down some of the key bits I've taken out of them, if you are interested in listening back, make sure you do go on the marketingbuzzword.com website or have a look on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, wherever, and you'll find sort of all 75 episodes, and you'll be able to listen at your own pleasure during the month of December, because I know some of you guys will be like, oh, I've missed episodes and I don't want to miss the Marketing Buzzword podcast. You can go back and listen over those 75 episodes. So, let's go back with social customer service. This is the very, very first episode we did on the show, on the podcast, which is crazy. And it's with an awesome guy called Dan Gingis, who at the time was the global social media director for McDonald's, and is now at Pasado. And he's awesome. And this episode, God, it seems like so far away, but yet there were so many things in here that really hit me as in what companies can do to maintain that high level of customer service whilst interacting people on a human level on social media. And it's like about actually automating those processes. It's about getting it buy-in from the top down and actually creating a culture of customer service, because social customer service shouldn't be left to a marketing or customer service team. It needs to get buy-in from everyone so people understand, and you have to use tools for it. You have to be able to ensure that everyone's on the same wavelength, that you can monitor all the interactions so you don't miss anything, so you're able to provide good level of customer service. And the final thing that I loved about this episode particularly is the fact that when the things he said about empowering those employees to be able to make those small changes themselves or have that discretionary output. So if an employee came and they had a discretion of up to £50, for example, where they could satisfy a customer up to £50 worth of either goods, services, vouchers, whatever, by themselves without getting any approval, which meant actually for small bits the customer service could be improved incredibly, really quickly. And I absolutely loved that episode. Episode 2 was social selling with Nikki Creel. Again, I first met Nikki online, I've met her in real person, I've read her books, and it's awesome. And I love the idea of social selling. I talked about this subsequently since. The social selling isn't about, it has to be about selling, but it's not about being direct with your sales. It's about relationship building. It's about long-term investment. It's about creating valuable content, valuable assets, and actually being a use to the industry and your customers so that they see you as an authority and someone they can trust, so that you, when they want and are ready to spend their hard-earned cash, they know who to come to because they know where they can get the value from. They know they're going to be working with someone who really knows their stuff and hasn't just built a website with a lot of content and buzzwords on it. Social selling is so important, but you have to remember that you always have to be selling. Otherwise, you are just networking. Just talking to people online without an end goal, you are just networking. Relationship marketing, this is with Jessica Phillips. Jessica Phillips was someone who I saw was speaking at Social Media Marketing World, and I just basically reached out to her and was like, I'm looking forward to hearing you speak there. Please, I want to know more about relationship marketing. And she works for she owns an agency called Now Marketing Group, where they focus on building these long-term relationships. They focus on actually providing value, but also trying to make sure that they're not being, that actually there's always more that they can do. They can increase personalization, how they can, over time, build up these relationships so that they become an authority on a subject, so that people see them as almost like the Wikipedia of their industry. So people understand actually this is not just a business-to-business relationship, it is a human-to-human relationship as well, a person-to-person relationship. It's about a company being more than just a name, it's about the sum of its parts, and that all people in the business are involved in relationship marketing. Not just marketers, not just customer service people, that everyone in the business is a part of relationship marketing. Episode 4 was Great Content and Content Marketing with Mark Masters. Mark Masters was an awesome guy who I listened to on another podcast where he released his book. Just got chatting with him, and it was basically like, got on really well. We met up at a conference somewhere that he was speaking at, and we've just been really good friends since. And he just wrote a book about content marketing, and I'm trying to think of the right words to say here, because we've talked about this term great content, and it annoys me a lot when people create great content. Well, what is great content? Because you don't really know what is great content until you've created it. If you go out with the intention of creating anything less than great, it's almost by the by. So you should be you should always be creating great content, but there can't always be great content. Great content is in the eye of the beholder. So it's a really interesting term that Mark and I broke down here, and it was one that we're trying to piece together. Actually, look, there isn't really great content. It's just content that resonates with certain people. So you can try as hard as you can to create great content. Sometimes that will resonate, sometimes that won't. Other times it'll be the most simple of things that resonate, and that can be great content without you realizing it. I absolutely loved that episode. That was incredibly fascinating for me. Next episode was Millennial Marketing with a guy called Ash Phillips, who runs a network called Yenna out the UK, and now global since, actually. It's basically young entrepreneurs, and we're sort of seen as rebels and entrepreneurs who are running startups and involved in startups. It's a really, really cool group to be a part of, and Ash is bringing some incredible waves in sort of the entrepreneurial space in around sort of, particularly around the southwest of England, but now obviously they've started in Berlin and Melbourne. It's incredible, growing at an amazing rate. And we talked about this concept of millennial marketing and how millennial marketing is a load of bull. That millennial marketing is casting such a wide net, it doesn't actually mean anything, because there's so many people in that industry, and there's so many nuances, there are so many niches within that. Actually, you can't just be targeting millennials. It's actually it just doesn't make sense, because millennials are just a buzzword, and people are like, how to create content for millennials, how to engage with millennials. Well, millennials are still so different. Gen Zers, again, everyone's like obsessed with them, but actually there's so much diversity in that network. It's just lazy targeting, and that's what I got out of this one. Is millennial marketing is lazy targeting. Be more specific, be more niche. That's how you're really going to get content that engages with someone who's specifically looking for something. Millennials doesn't really mean anything. Next up was creating communities. We looked at this with Chris Marr. And Chris Marr is awesome. He's the founder of the Content Marketing Academy up in Scotland, and he runs an event called CMA Live. And he's created this amazing community of people who are interested in content and marketing and all. Well, again, what the content marketing sort of stands for. I mean, put two of the three bits together, and you get content marketing. And what I loved about Chris is how it's creating that community. It's about empowering the people to have their own conversations. It's not about you having to drive every conversation, but you have to find starting points. You have to find areas of interest. You have to keep growing and adding to the community, changing things slightly so it keeps people interested. You have to look at what's engaging. You have to be on your toes all the time. Creating a community isn't just setting up a Facebook group and leaving it. You have to potentially spark conversations. You have to get involved sometimes in conversations, but not in every. You don't have to get involved in every conversation. And I love that idea of what Chris came up with and what he's done at the CMA. And it's just a great organisation that is doing so many great things and inspires so many people, like with other guests on the show, like John Asperian, who are a member of the CMA. It's about creating this community of people who are helping each other out, and that comes from sort of, again, it's like leadership stems from the top down. Exactly the same thing works in a community. A community is only as good as the people that have put the time and effort into it. And sometimes it's tough. Chris was saying, gosh, sometimes it was really, really hard, but actually the results of it at the end are so worth it. The next episode looked at engagement and engaging content, and that is with the marketing double act that is Andrew and Pete. They basically looked at actually what is really engagement and engaging content, because I was arguing for saying actually engagement is pointless. Engagement doesn't actually mean anything. Just because someone had liked or clicked a quick comment on your post doesn't actually mean it's successful or really resonated, because it's really easy for people to do. And they came back and we sort of had a little jousting fight, and I see actually look, the benefits of engagement are it creates that deeper relationship. It means that they want to come back. It means actually the more engagement you have, the more it is resonating. And actually over time, that is again feeds into relationship marketing and social selling, that they will come and buy from you, join your fill in your course, or join your community. All sorts of things like that. It's about actually how it all pieces together over time. The next episode was networking with a woman called Tracy Smolinski, who runs the Intrabiz network out of Cardiff, and they just held their big annual Intrabiz event in Cardiff, where they had people like Lord Sugar coming to speak, which was so cool. And we talked to Tracy about actually networking. Is our business card still relevant today, and all sorts of things like that. Actually, how you'd actually go into a networking event, and saying actually the fortune is in the follow-up, that when we go to these events, yes, we need to be networking and building relationships. We need to find different ways of talking to people, but you should always have a plan. You should have an idea of what you're doing, and actually trying to start conversations with a different tone, find the personality, find the people behind the business, because actually that's what they really want to talk about. Don't go and be that person who goes in straight away, it's all about you. You've got to, yes, it is about you, but you have to find that balance and how you actually sort of what's the word I'm looking for? It's how you actually put out that this is what your business does. It shouldn't all be about you. It should be trying to find value, trying to find connections. And remember, networking isn't about how much necessarily, not what you do, it's about how much value you can potentially provide, or how you can actually help service any needs that they have. Really interesting insight into networking with Tracy there. And I think if you're into networking and you go to these local events, or you even go to national conferences, it's definitely worth checking out that episode with Tracy Smolinski. Next up, we had Authority Marketing with Kerry L. Watt. Now this was really interesting. It's about how you build up your own authority, and it's looking at how you create press mentions, how you actually put yourself out there, how you create helpful content on LinkedIn and Twitter, and how you get seen as an authority on a subject by putting yourself out there, by sharing your knowledge, by sharing your raw emotions, by listening to what's going on in the industry and putting your own perspective on it, by finding shortcuts and actually helping share those with the industry. These are all little things that help you build up authority, and by getting press mentions, by being and you start being recognised as someone who knows their stuff in the industry. And this is something actually that I've taken a lot on board myself with my sort of personal branding story videos. I don't know if you've started watching, which I'm actually also hosting on the marketingbuzzword.com website, and sort of trying to get out there a bit more, so sharing my story, sharing my insights, sharing my thoughts, feelings and ideas. I love what Kerry was advocating in this episode, and I love. So if you are interested in building a personal brand and building maybe an authority on the subject, and if someone who's also going to read my book, I'd check out this episode with Kerry L. Watt. Next up was Search Engine Optimization, or SEO, with Barry Schwartz. And this was a really fun episode, because one of the first things I asked Barry was, is SEO dead? And it was just that moment of going, we both knew that what the answer was, but God almighty, there's still so many posts out there saying SEO is dead, SEO doesn't live anymore. It's all a load of rubbish. SEO is really, really important. Yes, it's changing. It's changing over time as we'll have more and more voice searches, as we have the way that we look for things changes. It may become more important in some areas, become less important in other areas. But SEO is really important. The other thing we need to look at, actually, it doesn't require you to be a huge techie. It doesn't require you to have intricate knowledge of SEO, but you do have to understand some of the fundamentals in order to get it done right. So looking at the redirects, looking at the robots.txt file. 404 pages. Can you redirect those so they don't get an error page? Can you actually do something else about that 404 page to make it more engaging and fun? How can you create a website that actually speaks to Google and to people? Really important. It's really fascinating insight, and Barry is such a leading authority in SEO. It was such a pleasure to be able to get someone like him on to help break down that term. Next up, we had humanization and humanizing marketing with Brian Kramer. Now, this was an episode, a guy that I really, really wanted to get on to talk about this topic, because Brian is the author of H2H, human to human, H2H, which basically looks at actually how we create these human connections. It's about people doing business with people, and actually in the digital world that we often forget about that. And it's almost like, actually, I guess, the thing that Mark Schaefer is just writing and finishing up his book called Marketing Rebellion, which is about the battle for the most human brands. And this is something that's coming back in again, and Brian's identified this years in advance that this humanization was going to be really important. And the bit I took out of this was that actual brands, the digital world is not going to change, but brands need to understand, and they need to be a part, understand how it's all going to work together. They need to maintain that human level of working with your brand, but also need to understand actually they need to implement technology. It's about balance, and that's basically the biggest thing I learned about the humanization companies aren't going to get more human. They're going to get less human, potentially, because they're going to implement more technology, but they need to be better about how they be better humans. So not just be a human just for the sake of having a human, but actually add some real value to a customer's journey. I think that's an incredible thing, and I think something that we're trying to do at Talkative as well with these human powered communications. So we've just taken on Bravissimo, who are a leading lingerie company here in the UK, and they're doing video calling, web calling, live chat with all their customers, and offering that high level of personalization in each of their interactions, so that they're actually giving that human to human connection through a digital medium. I absolutely love this, and I buy into what Brian's doing so much. Next up was machine learning with a woman called Elizabeth Clark. Elizabeth Clark is becoming a leading name when it comes to machine learning, and the stuff that she's doing with Dream Agility, which is a company, is incredible. And machine learning, I thought, was a fascinating subject, because I didn't realise necessarily machine learning was a subset of AI, and the power that machine learning has in terms of being able to drive paid interactions online is incredible. I love the fact that it can help sort of teach you and guide you in terms of different words and phrases, how people are using websites, not just looking at statically, X number of keyword search, but actually using machine learning to better adapt PPC and paid strategies to your business, so that you can actually have a better return on investment on those. Absolutely fascinating subjects there, and it's something that I didn't know a huge amount. So some of that stuff I haven't been able to implement yet, because I'm like, whoa, there's so much here. But we all know machine learning is coming down the line, so it's definitely worth checking that out. Next up, we had the awesome Joey Coleman talking about customer experience, and so Joey recently released a book for this, and Joey's becoming a bit of an authority on customer experience, and people are seeing that he knows his stuff in terms of how do you create customer experience. It's about actually thinking about the whole funnel from start to end. It's about creating a culture, creating a climate within the business that everyone is helping, everyone is leading up to the customer experience. No one is left out. There is no department in the business that doesn't impact customer experience. And again, like I said sort of earlier with Dan Gingis, it has to come from the top down. The fish rots from the top down, but also the fish sort of moves because of the head down. They help control, and they help create that culture within the business. And like social customer service, you have to give your agents and your employees some discretion to improve that customer experience. There are all sorts of things as well in customer experience that I found was really interesting when speaking to Joey. Just all these little subtle differences that actually making a change to something being above the fold, below the fold, a slight change to how the menu looks can make a big difference to customer service. It doesn't have to be massive changes. It doesn't have to be something. It can be, but it doesn't have to be, and that can make a huge difference to your customer experience. Next up was the awesome Brian Fanzo talking about personal branding. Now, love this topic. Personal branding is something that I'm finding hugely important at the moment. And one of the big things I took away from Brian Fanzo is that it's just a digital first journey. That everyone looks for you online. When they first met you, the first thing they'll do, if they met you briefly and they sort of liked you, they go online to find out a bit more about you to see if they can actually, did they were right in that justification or not. Sometimes you'll meet people online before you've even met them in real life. Do I speak to them online? Fine. That's exactly how personal branding works. It's the way you walk, the way you talk, the way you act, the way you smell, the way people judge you. And people do judge you. And you have to either come back at them and say, no, that's actually not me, or you actually want them to have that impression of you. Because first impressions do count. I absolutely took that away from personal branding. I think it's just a really important, simple, powerful message to take away from it. Next up, this was an interesting episode, and this is digital knowledge management with Dwayne Forrester and Rev Ciancio. Okay, I think that's how you say his last name. Anyway, from Yext, and these guys were interesting because I'd never heard of the term DKM before, and I spoke to Dave, most people know him as Rev, at Social Media Marketing World, and he was talking to me about digital knowledge management. And I was like, this is really cool because Yext have basically coined their own term here that no one else was really using, and they're making it a thing. They're becoming the people who talk about digital knowledge management, DKM. And I love that because they've created something themselves that is now becoming a bit of a buzzword. Because everyone's like, what does it actually mean? Ultimately, it's about consolidating and understanding all that data you have online and bring it into one place. So all that digital knowledge about your company, the way who you are, where you are, what people know about you. It's about coming to that in having that in one place. So you can just bring everything together, including sort of online reviews, locations, all that sort of stuff. Digital knowledge management as well. That it's actually a new role and it's a blend of different things. So it's not by advertising it as a digital knowledge management, you can get someone in who knows about different areas of the business, and it's usually quite high level. It's not a junior role, and it's not someone who is just interested in marketing. They have to have a wide skill set and wide knowledge of how business actually works. Next up, we had Paul Ince and talked about event marketing. And Paul is actually the founder of Marketed Live here in the UK. Now, it's a reasonably small conference. It's not huge, but it actually had a real powerful impact. So I didn't actually make the inaugural conference, but it seemed to have a really, really powerful impact upon so many people. And I loved sort of what he was doing to promote this event and how he was all working together. So I got him on to talk about event marketing. I loved sort of how it's about the people. I loved his passion about how it's about creating stuff that people want, and he was trying to do things a little bit differently with that in terms of actually promoting it by doing little bits like the blog, by doing the little Marketed Not Live podcast. I just loved how he was sort of trying to bring everything together and have a key theme for the events. And I think that's the key thing, is when you put out an event, it's having a key theme. And their one for this year was the future of marketing. I went to this year's conference and it was really, really, really awesome. And I'm so glad I went, and I will wholeheartedly recommend Marketed Live to anyone who would be interested in going. Next up, what do we have next? Next. This is where I've lost track. Going live and live video. And this is with my main man, Chris Strubb. So Chris Strubb is actually writing the foreword to the new book, Marketing, a Buzzword to Marketing Authority. And I'm so excited to sort of have him write the foreword for that. And I was really excited to get him on the show as well, because live streaming is his bag. It's what he does so much and does so well, and it's something that I'm not very good at. It's not me, but it's interesting to sort of see how it could be for people, and how they can make their live streams better, how they can make them more interesting for other people. How they can get to the point. Just because you're going live doesn't mean you can't get straight to the point. How you schedule live so you can know that people are going to be there and people have that notification period. I think it's really fascinating. I love the idea of live streaming. Sometimes I think that it's done a bit of a budget way. Sometimes I think it's absolutely incredible. The choice is yours and whether you think it's worth it or not. But ultimately, I think actually, look, if you want to be able to be raw and authentic to the point, then live video is definitely something that you should consider. And I mean, again, live or vertical, non-vertical, I'd say probably actually vertical video is probably slightly better for live streaming just because it's more in the moment. But, hey, it's completely up to you. Next up, what do we have next? Next up, we had copywriting with John Espirian. Now, John Espirian is an awesome guy that I got introduced to, and he actually lived around the corner from me. And copywriting is it sounds like a really boring job to some people. Some people it's really interesting, but for me it doesn't sound like the most interesting. I love that John's trying to make copywriting more interesting, trying to add a bit of personality to that, and that's the biggest thing, is when you're writing stuff, add personality. And this is what I took out of John. John, also known as the relentlessly helpful copywriter. He's trying to not broaden himself, but try to find different ways of speaking and appealing to different people. And I love what he's doing. We're sort of talking about copywriting in terms of some of the skills needed, in terms of the personality needed, in terms of shortcuts, and just adding real value to people's lives. Being relentlessly helpful. I love that term that he's gone with. And I think that's something that, again, I'll talk about the sort of the history of being relentlessly helpful, actually, as a case study in my book, which is quite cool. Next up, we had entrepreneurship, and this is with a woman called Ashley Duderenok, and she's based out in Hong Kong. So she was the first Asian guest based out of Asia on the podcast, and she was really cool, talking about actually trying to build up this entrepreneurial spirit, that everyone's got a bit of entrepreneurial spirit. They've got things that you want to do, things you want to try, and trying to find these little bits, and actually how there's this culture of being a mompreneur, dadpreneur, youpreneur, whatever preneur you want to be. Ultimately, you're starting a business. And actually, that's incredible. But how do you start a business? You have to link back to actually a lot of the buzzwords that we've said already. Relationship building, humanization, social selling, event marketing. You have to do all these things. And that's how you do a load of those things pretty well. And you'll be a half-decent entrepreneur. It's about trying to find those little gaps in the industry. Those little things that make you stand out. I loved this chat with Ashley. I learned an incredible amount from it. So I think if you are into entrepreneurship, or you think that actually you don't know whether you'd class yourself as an entrepreneur or not, because there seems to be a bit of a backlash against it, it's definitely check out this episode with Ashley. It'd be really, really cool. Next up was influencer marketing with Angus Nelson. So Angus runs a network called The Life of Dad, which is really brilliant, and quite frankly, it's just brilliant. And he talks about influencer marketing, how he's actually using influencers as a way of generating more business and more awareness of your company. And you have to have a plan and a strategy with it. There's got to be something behind it. It can't be, I'm just going to use an influencer this month. It has to be planned and built in. What are you actually going to get out of it? Have you actually taken the time to research the influencer in terms of what they can actually offer you? Just because they have thousands and thousands of followers doesn't mean they're any better than someone who's got 1,000 followers. It depends on the right amount. Don't just trust their follower numbers. You have to go into the detail. That is how you win influencer marketing. How so many brands are getting influencer marketing wrong, and ultimately then blaming influencer marketing as the source of failure, when actually they didn't necessarily do their due diligence. Yes, influencer marketing isn't perfect. Yes, it has its faults, but actually a bit of due diligence can go a long way. Next up, we had conversational marketing with the awesome Madeline Sklar. And we loved about we talked about Twitter chats, and we talked about having conversations online, having meaningful conversations that either build relationships or eventually convert, and will eventually convert. It's about actually trying to make sure you have conversations with a purpose as well, because you can't be constantly online trying to have conversations with everyone you've ever met. You have to be a little bit more specific. Absolutely loved this with Madeline. The conversational marketing is something I'm quite passionate about myself, so it was great to sort of have some of my ideas and thoughts on it really sort of backed up by Madeline as well, which is great. Next up, we had... What do we have next? Next up... This is where it starts getting... I've tried to go back through all my stuff. Next up, we had paid search, and this was a guy called Tim Addison, who at the time was at a company called SEM Rush, most of you will know. And we actually looked at sort of SEM Rush's report on paid search, and we looked at actually how you need to look at, just because someone's got a real niche doesn't mean you actually necessarily need to go to paid to put money behind it. Sometimes actually, if you can just dominate that in an SEO format, that is perfect. Actually chucking a load of money onto something doesn't necessarily guarantee success. And the final thing was looking at, actually there isn't really a minimum spend. Now some people will say yes, they need to have a minimum spend. Yes, you potentially do if you want to get anywhere, but it all depends on the keywords that you're targeting. So don't let anyone tell you that you can't spend a tenner, 20 quid. Yes, you're not going to get it very far. It really won't go very far. But you can spend little. But again, you get out what you put in. If you put in only 20 quid, you're likely to not get anything out of it. Next up, we had video marketing. Video marketing with a guy called Andrew Davis. And Andrew Davis is so cool. He does these awesome little videos called the Loyalty Loop, and he did these letters where these really fun videos where he wrote letters to people who were sort of I can't remember what he called them. It's basically just people who just sort of spammed him with sales messages. I absolutely love what he's doing with video. They're just so funny. They're quite sort of dry humor. They're not. He's not like being a comedian, but just the way he presents, the way he tells the stories on there. It's absolutely incredible, and I love sort of looking at sort of the difference between long video, short video with him, and actually what and why you'd create certain types of videos in order to make a difference to people's lives and to stand out above anyone else, really. And I think that's something that particularly resonated with me, and I love sort of what he's doing with video marketing. Really, really, really cool stuff. Next up was user-generated content with Mordecai Holtz. Mordecai is someone I met out at Engage Prague conference in, Prague by Social Bakers. And we talked about user-generated content and how stuff he was doing for the city of Jerusalem, trying to look at actually how you get more people to create more content that you can use. But not even just that, it's how do you get them to create the right content. And it's about encouraging them, setting out guidelines by saying being quite specific about the sorts of things that you're looking for. Because sometimes it's quite easy to say, I just want reviews, I just want to be focused on, I just want reviews, I just want positive mention. But actually you can potentially make it more specific, which means it's slightly more relevant to a wider cross-section of the audience. Next up, we had chatbots. Now, chatbots was something that I covered in an individual episode before we went on to the guest episode with Kelly Noble Mirabella. But this learned so much from Kelly and this other episode with myself, where we looked at chatbots actually not being don't have to be everything. They can be specific. You don't have to make a huge chatbot that tries to deal and replaces humans. It's actually about the chatbot being a triage tool, being a step to it. Yes, it can be more if you need and want it to be more, but actually ultimately it is a triage tool that helps you service people quicker, it helps you service people more efficiently. That's what chatbots are. It's not, you don't have to have this big be-all and end-all thing, but you do need something that actually helps filter some of those messages down. I think that can be really important. Just using chatbots the right way. And do check out the episode with Kelly for loads more on chatbots. Next up was Katie Cliff talking PR and public relations and looking at how the world of PR and public relations is changing. Talking about actually how you need to reach out to journalists in a different way than you ever used to, because journalists are so under pressure and time poor. They're looking and clamouring for decent articles and stories, and it's about being relevant. What is it going to do for them? How is this story that you're pitching, is it going to annoy journalists because it just has no relevance? It's not time specific, it's not interesting, It's about actually trying to find that relevance and resonance. Ooh, I like that. Relevance and resonance. I might have to use that again. But seriously, it's about PR is an interesting thing, and I'm started using a lot more PR tools and PR techniques in order to gain a better understanding of how PR works and feeds in with marketing. It's a fascinating area. I don't know why I said the first part of fascinating 3 or 4 times there, but it is generally so interesting. Next up was Marketing Trust with a guy called Adam Buchanan. And it's really cool because, firstly, he keeps bees, so he makes his own honey and takes them to conferences, which is really cool, which is obviously Marketing Buzzword Podcast. He loved that. I love that. Second thing is Marketing Trust is a term that he has coined himself. And it's about actually how we create that trust in us. It's about showing up regularly. It's about showing up consistently, showing up with valuable content. It's about actually how do we create more trust with our companies, and that's by showing a human face. It's about being there. It's about being authentic and honest. And I trying to go into some of the details of this. There were some real interesting details in here that I think actually the best way of me doing any justification is just to go point you back to that episode, because the way Adam explained it in his own words, that is going to be better than I could ever sort of say it and do it any justice. So I'm going to leave you on that one with Adam and just point you back to the episode with Adam Buchanan. Next up, God, we're getting through this. We're getting through this. It's online reviews. It's something that I'm hugely passionate about. I'm a big believer in. I think the power of online reviews to convert people because they show a level of detail and understanding. It's easy to like something. It's easy to just click 4 or 5 stars. But when someone's taken the time to comment, you know they should feel really passionately either way. And actually, you can learn so much, about a product and about a company from the way their online reviews are. And they've been proved time and time again. If you've got a load of positive reviews, they will increase the amount of traffic and increase the amount of sales, because people, it's that social proof. It's that not just someone going 5 stars, but actually someone has really taken the time to write a whole big review on them. I think it's absolutely amazing, and I love online reviews. And if you're not into online reviews, do check out the episode about online reviews. Next up, we had podcasting with a guy called Mark Asquith. Mark is becoming a really, really big deal in the podcasting space. He speaks at so many conferences. His Podcast Success Academy is just going great guns. He's just basically doing podcasting incredibly well and saying, and the bit I really took out from this, and I remember vividly, he's saying is, obviously the most podcasts fail after 7 episodes. And he said there's not really a problem with that because people are trying it, and if they're failing, they know actually that they couldn't do it or they wasn't good enough. So actually, look, that's how people try things in the industry. That's how they get into the industry. But ultimately, look, if they don't last, there's not really a problem with that, because how many things actually go right first time? And it's about going and just giving podcasting a go. Podcasting is great. I absolutely love it. As you could probably tell, I love using this medium. But you do need to sort of balance it up and going, actually, look, if I'm going to create 2 or 3 and I've failed 7 times, either podcasting is wrong for you, or you need to find some new topics, because you need to find something that actually is going to last and that you can use over time. Next up was data-driven marketing. And so we're looking at actually whether we get crippled by the data or whether we just go and use our gut, and actually trying to how much you blend sort of your gut feeling with data, because you shouldn't be purely reliant on data. If you're purely reliant on data, you will fall behind because you haven't got any creativity, you haven't necessarily got any context around things. You have to be able to understand with your gut and actually use other mediums that aren't data, so you can actually make more informed, more human choices. Just because the data says that there's a 51% chance versus a 49% chance doesn't mean that 49 is actually worse off, because actually that can create a load of other benefits that data may not be able to understand. And this is what I love about data-driven marketing. You have to at least record data so you can understand how things are changing. but you don't have to necessarily listen to everything in that very moment, but you need to be able to monitor any changes over time. Next up was GDPR. This is a guy called Chris Roberts, and Chris talked about actually how GDPR, everyone was panicking, going crazy, when actually all they need to do is just tighten down their email lists. I have noticed a significant difference, especially over Black Friday. Actually, I did get so many less emails than I did the year prior. And GDPR's all sort of calmed down a lot now. We're just over 6 months past GDPR day 0, and not a huge amount has changed. As far as I know, no one's been prosecuted, but GDPR is still going to be a topic actually that people aren't going to be talking about, because it is going to eventually, there will be some prosecutions, because it's almost like the calm before the storm now. So definitely, if you are interested in GDPR and European legislation, check out that episode with Chris Roberts. Right, we're heading into sort of the final back straight, the sort of back end before the back straight. Facebook groups. This is with a woman called Bella Vasta. Bella Vasta is basically, she just makes so many awesome Facebook groups. You got Bella's Pets and creating all these different groups where she's creating communities and on Facebook that are around different subjects, and she's making a load of money off it, and she's building really successful communities. So that's part of it. Is yes, she's making money out of it, but she's also creating successful communities, which means it actually has that dual effect, because ultimately it's like what I said earlier, where if you're not social selling and you're not doing the selling element, you're just networking. It's the same thing with this, really. If you actually just creating Facebook groups with a load of people in there, but you haven't got an actual end goal of how you actually make money and how you monetize it, then you're just creating random peer groups, and you have to facilitate it, you have to maintain it, and it is hard work. You don't need any specific skills, we worked out with Bella, but you do need to have that aptitude and that enthusiasm, potentially that just way of being able to talk to people. It's just quite a helpful attribute to have. The next up, we had conversion rate optimization, and this essentially just looks at how small changes on your website and on your digital presence can actually make a huge difference in your click-through and retention rate. It doesn't have to be anything huge, and this is the bit I really took out of this. You don't have to make big changes. A simple thing like a color change on a call to action. So a color change on a button can make a huge difference. A theme, the theme color that you're using, the brand colors, that can make a huge difference. Different questions that people are asking. All these are just little things, but actually make a huge difference. Conversion rate optimization. Branding. Looked at this with a guy called Dennis Owen, who's the head of social media for Hong Kong Airways. Branding is such a cool and interesting topic, and it's something that goes far beyond where you ever think. And again, it's like going back to personal branding, but it's just from a business perspective. And it's looking about how all the different elements of your areas, no matter even if they don't interact with customers, they're still important part of your brand, and it links in with culture. It links in with how people perceive you as an individual and as a company. It's something that I spend a lot of time thinking about, and it's something that actually branding is something that, although it's quite hard to tangibly marry up how much you've spent on branding versus how much reward you're going to get, you have to know that branding is a good thing. Next up was social contesting with Desiree Martinez, and we looked at how you actually run these contests on Facebook, so that you're not just creating a contest and people will just disappear after that. You're actually trying to create those long-lasting impressions. How you can use chatbots like things to capture some people's data. How you can offer something that's highly relevant to them. So don't just offer a prize that actually people will go, what? How does that work? It's actually doing something that's related to the product itself, that actually catches people's eyes. It's about creating more than just a like, comment, share. It's about actually encouraging people to do something a little bit more interesting, a little bit more fun. You don't have to keep doing the same thing. And again, social contests don't have to be particularly complex. It's keep it simple, stupid. Next up, we looked at conversational commerce. Conversational commerce about the art of using chatbots and sort of conversations in order to actually sell. It's about actually how you create these sales opportunities online through conversations. So basically it's like conversational marketing, but obviously going from the marketing element to the sales element. So again, going from the networking to the social selling. This is where some of these buzzwords are quite different, but also that sound very similar. So that's why it's this. Essentially, that's what part of this what this podcast is all about. Next up, we had guerrilla marketing. And this is basically, it's like guerrilla warfare. So it's where these small businesses, these startups, are trying to do things a little bit more creative on a really low budget. I love the idea of like being able to do things. So if people have got parking, someone's getting parking tickets, actually give them like a voucher to say, look, this is the way of making your day a little bit better. All these little things like that make a big, big difference. I'm a huge fan of guerrilla marketing, and sometimes it is quite hard to do because I haven't got the most creative brain. But if you've got creative brain, have a look at some guerrilla marketing campaigns and see if you can adapt them to yourself, because it's so cool and so cost effective. Next up was self-publishing, and this is something we looked at because obviously I was writing a book, and Tim Lewis, a guy who runs the Begin Self-Publishing podcast, came on to talk about self-publishing and actually how it's actually potentially you don't lose anything by going self-publishing, whereas going with a traditional publisher, whereas before, obviously, you had to go down that traditional publishing route. And actually, look, anyone can write a book. And it doesn't mean everyone should write a book, but anyone can write a book. And actually, the barriers to entry are much lower than they ever have been before. Next up, we had corporate culture. Talk about actually how we create a culture and how culture actually pays dividends. Not just it's quite difficult to sort of measure it directly in terms of ROI. But actually, culture actually helps breed innovation. It helps reduce turnover. It helps you get new employees because they see how the business is run. They want to be a part of it, especially people who are of a younger generation like me, people who are in their mid to late 20s, people who are coming into the workforce and they're in their late teens and early 20s. They want these more fun. They want these less rigid, these less corporate environments. And actually, as businesses, you can either say, no, this is our culture, and that's fine, or you can try and move with those times. It's completely up to you. Next up, we had account-based marketing. Account-based marketing essentially looks at how we create different marketing collateral for different accounts in terms of the industry. So each you have an account manager, for example, and actually how you create content and individualized content for that specific account in terms of how they use your tool or your service, how you actually promote individually to them, that level of personalization. This is what account-based marketing is. It looks at actually creating almost micro marketing strategies for each individual account that you have. So you can make a lot of standard content, but you need to tweak certain amounts of it for individual accounts in order to make sure the message really hits home with them. That way you're not just doing this standard bulk approach, but you're actually doing that humanization. You're doing that bit of relationship marketing because you're actually showing that it's been built, or at least partly built, like for individually them. Next up, we had PPC and pay to play. So not even just looking at paid search, we're looking at actually like search through social media, looking at actually is going to this pay to play environment now, and actually how it is still possible to rank organically, but actually it's not as easy as it has been previously, and whether that's a good thing or not, that's completely up to you. But I love this episode of Rob Watson about PPC and pay to play. It was really good chat, and I think you're interested in starting PPC campaigns, take a look at this with Rob, because I don't want to not do his content any disjustice or injustice by talking about it here in a way that he can explain much better. Inbound marketing, a term coined by HubSpot years ago, which basically looks at how businesses can use a lot of different marketing tactics in order to get inbound leads and inbound traffic. So things like creating content, creating emails, even some paid search stuff that basically helps draw people in. So it's not about advertising where you're saying bam, buy this. It's about actually creating something valuable for the employee, for the audience. So ebooks, white papers, infographics, stats, reports, this sort of stuff. That is all inbound marketing. Anything that drives traffic towards your site is potentially deemed as inbound marketing. We're literally on the home straight now. Convenience with Shep Hyken. I love the idea of convenience. It's something that I didn't think was a buzzword necessarily, and then Shep started talking about actually saying people moved away from convenience. And actually now they're coming back to a convenience culture. So we moved away. We started moving to these massive supermarkets. And now we're going back to these small little, almost like corner shops, but run by the big supermarkets because they want convenience. Because they know that people will pay a slightly higher premium for those, for that convenience. And I think it's fascinating that people will always pay more for being slightly more convenient, when actually it could take you 2 minutes and actually you could get the thing for X amount cheaper. It's really interesting way of looking at things. Gamification with Michael Bureen. Now this is really cool, saying that actually games don't have to be big. Anyone can make a game. It doesn't have to be online. It can be offline. Small things like a little puzzle can actually make a big difference. If someone gets onto a 404 page on your website, is there a little game potentially? Or maybe you don't want to keep them on there. You want to direct them straight away. On Google, if the internet goes down, there's a little dinosaur game that just comes up there. It's just little things like that. Little games like that keep people interested, keep people from being angry. They help keep people's attention, which means actually when you're talking to people, so when you're having to wait in a queue, actually by doing some gamification, they don't feel like the time is going away from them as quickly as it potentially is. So actually they could spend 15 minutes on playing a game, and actually it only feels like they've been waiting for 5 minutes instead of they have been waiting for 15 minutes. Little things like that can make a big difference to your brand, your customer experience. Meaningful interactions, meaningful engagement with Christine Gritman is next. And this basically looks at how Facebook, after the Facebook apocalypse went out, we were like 7-8 months after the Facebook apocalypse, and actually looking at how it's just forced us to actually have more conversations, more real world, more detailed conversations with people online. Just forced people to actually work harder and be less lazy, because people got lazy because they knew that they didn't have to work, because they knew they could get found on Facebook anyway. They get ranked for things. So now we're actually getting to that stage where like, oh, actually we can't just do that anymore. We have to work a little bit harder. And that's the bit I loved about the conversation with Christine, is actually saying we have to find these points that actually have conversation, find ways of resonating with people, because that's how we're going to get found in these new pay-to-play models of social media. I absolutely love that. Next up, we had referral marketing, and the idea of that is actually what some big networking groups do. It's the idea of actually passing referrals on to people. You need to create a culture of actually a referral culture, because actually this word of mouth marketing, these getting one of your employees to say something positive to one of their friends, when your customers start to say something positive when their friends, when their peers, when their work colleagues about your business, means actually potentially you're going to get more business of it. You need to actually think about having a referral strategy. How are you going to encourage referrals? How are you going to maximize referrals? Think about all these sort of things, because referrals actually do generate a huge amount of business. And coming from offline medium as well, it's an interesting way of developing that human to human, that humanization element of marketing. Next up, we had creative AI. This is looking at the idea of actually using AI, and I love this is what I took out of this episode. Using AI to not just do things, but also to come up with new ideas and new ways of allowing us as the humans to be more creative, because we can see what works, doesn't work. We can actually, if we get put under pressure because the data says we need to do this, we can actually think about new areas and new ways in which we can actually just resonate with our audience. And I just love what they're trying to do with creative AI. I think it's just a fascinating subject, and AI is something that I still don't know a huge amount about. I'm much better than I ever have been, but there's so much more I can learn about creative AI. 4 more episodes. Next up was social intelligence for Ben Donkel. I love this, the idea of actually using social data and different tools, and you have to use a range of tools in order to build up a proper insight into what customers are doing. In a digital world, it is pretty much possible to track most things that customers are doing. And if you're not tracking that data, if you aren't using paid tools and a range of tools to track that different data, you are putting yourself at a potential disadvantage. You have to look wider than just one tool. There isn't a one tool that solves it all. You have to be quite smart with the data that you use as well. So not creating a paralysis by analysis, which is a bit that I found really interesting in our conversation. Avoid paralysis by analysis, but at least record all that data so you can make an informed choice as and when you need. Tribes with Jen Cole. How you build a tribe and actually how you become someone that people want to follow. So that you're showing up consistently, you're being highly relevant, you're being highly contextual, that you're offering things that no one else can do, you're being personal, you're adding your own personality. This is how you build a tribe. And the person with the strongest tribe will actually ultimately win out in the day. You need to be able to have people who are sort of loyal. Actually, people don't wait. There are few people that I'm like, oh my god, I have to literally look at them, and I'm not waiting with bated breath for them to just turn up into my life on social media. But by showing up regularly, people will start looking for you and thinking about you and what you're saying. So they don't think they've heard you. If they don't think they've heard of you for a week, do they go looking for you? It's a really interesting topic, and I love talking about tribes, and I love what Jen's trying to do with building up a tribe and her own audience. Last, we have snackable content with Julia McCoy. Talking about actually how snackable content is this 7 seconds, this attention span of a goldfish is just a lot of BS. And actually, look, that snackable content has its time and place, but actually overall, is it that relevant? Is it that useful? Probably not. It's about trying to find that whole balance. Snackable content isn't great. Long form content actually resonates much more. It allows you to add more detail, more complexity. And yes, you can do all these snackable bits of content around it, but you shouldn't be building your entire content process around pure snackable content. That's what the difference is. Actually, don't build your business around it, but actually still be aware that it actually exists and is a thing. And last but not least, we have online courses with Rob Balasabas from Thinkific. Love online courses. I think there are so many of them turning up at the moment. I think it'd be interesting to sort of see how this industry develops over time, whether it's going to be a big expansion and a big contraction. I think it's great that people are trying to share their knowledge and value, but I think what Rob says is quite correct in terms of actually you need to really find how you can add more value than just a YouTube video, because anyone can just look for YouTube videos, and it's about actually how you can offer those bonuses. You can have that personalization, you have that me time, and actually trying to work out why your course is any different to any other YouTube group or a couple of YouTube videos out there. You need to sort of have that story, that transition, that journey through from start to finish. That's what makes a really successful online course. Whoa, that was a lot of buzzwords, and it's been a longer episode than I would normally do, but I hope that you found it useful, because it's always nice to have a recap of everything that's happened so far. I was thinking about doing this episode on 100, and I'm so glad. Probably should have done it on 50, really, but this podcast is such a rewarding experience, and thank you so much for listening and spending your time and writing your reviews and just getting involved in the comment section. I'll be back on Monday. No, I'm not going to be back on Monday. Oh, God almighty. I'm not going to be back on Monday. I'm going to be back on the first Monday in January with a new guest episode. So, if you are thinking that you could be a great guest for the show, if you know someone else who could be a great guest or a buzzword you want me to cover, please do let me know, because I want to carry on this journey and do another 75 episodes next year. Yep, who's with me? Another 75 episodes next year. Goodbye.
This podcast is part of the You Are the Media Network.